Hello students, nice good morning to all of you. Now today I am going to give my 8th lecture on the class 9th chemistry, that is matter in our surroundings. In our previous lecture we were discussing about latent heat. Now what is latent heat? As we have discussed earlier, that latent heat is the heat that is required in the conversion of physical states of matter, that is solid to liquid and liquid to gaseous state. So latent heat is of two types. One is latent heat of fusion, and the second one is latent heat of vaporization. One is latent heat of fusion and the other one is latent heat of vaporization. Now, what is latent heat of fusion? Now, when solid converts itself into liquid state, the amount of heat required is known as latent heat of fusion, and when liquid converts itself into gaseous state, that is vapor state, then that is known as latent heat of vaporization. Now, we will define what is latent heat of fusion and what is latent heat of vaporization. Now, before the definition, a question comes to our mind is that where is the heat used, or why the temperature doesn't increase, is not if reflected in the thermometer while we are supplying the heat. Now, when we supply the heat, what happens? It is used up in overcoming the forces of attraction between the particles, and there is no net increase in the kinetic energy of the particles. So the temperature rise will only happen when the kinetic energy of the particles gets increased. Now that is happening only when the total conversion takes place. That is when total solid converts into liquid, then only the temperature will start rising. Now coming on to the definition of latent heat of fusion. What is latent heat of fusion? Now the amount of heat required in joules to convert a solid substance into liquid at its melting point without any rise in temperature. That means the temperature remains the same. Now, one thing more can be added, that is the amount of heat required in joules to convert 1 kg of a solid substance into liquid at its melting point without any rise in temperature is known as latent heat of fusion. Now, the latent heat of fusion of ice is 3.34 joules per kg. This is the latent heat of fusion of ice. So we will rectify or correct a little bit the amount of heat required in joules to convert 1 kg of a solid substance into liquid at its melting point without any rise in temperature is known as latent heat of fusion. Students, now let us move to the latent heat of vaporization. Now this is the heat which is used when liquid state, when a substance in liquid state converts into gaseous state. Now this latent heat is known as latent heat of vaporization. So what is the definition? Latent heat of vaporization is the amount of heat required to convert 1 kg of liquid into gaseous state at its boiling point. At its boiling point without any rise in temperature. Without any rise in temperature. No rise in temperature is taking place. Okay. Now what is the latent heat of vaporization for water? Latent heat of vaporization of water is 22.5 cross 10 to the power 5 joules per kg. So what is latent heat of vaporization? Latent heat of vaporization is the amount of heat required to convert 1 kg of liquid into gaseous state at its boiling point without any rise in temperature. Latent heat of vaporization of water is 22.5 cross 10 to the power 5 joules per kg. Now moving on to the next topic, that is sublimation. Now what is sublimation? Now we have seen that when solid converts is heated, when a solid is first converted into liquid and then it gets converted into gas. Now there are some substances which converts from solid directly into gaseous state. Now no liquid state is being achieved, the solid directly changes itself into gaseous state. Now this process is known as sublimation. So there are substances like camphor, naphthalene balls, iodine, ammonium chloride. These are substances which converts, which when heated, its solid state converts itself into gaseous state, and when gas is cooled, it converts into solid state. So What is sublimation? Sublimation is the process in which a solid converts into liquid, converts into gaseous state without converting into liquid state. So, what is sublimation and what are the substances which sublime? I have told you ammonium chloride, camphor, as well as naphthalene balls. When we use naphthalene balls in our box where the woolen materials are being kept to avoid the moth and insects to work upon, so we use these naphthalene balls. Now, example of substances which sublime, which undergoes the process of sublimation. Now we have ammonium chloride, now we have naphthalene balls, iodine, and solid carbon dioxide. Which is also called dry ice. Now, why it is called dry ice, we will learn in our next video. So, these are the examples of the substances which sublime: ammonium chloride, naphthalene, iodine, solid carbon dioxide, camphor. Now, these are the substances which, when heated, uh, changes from solid to gaseous state directly. It doesn't undergo the liquid change. So they are called sublimable substances, and the process is known as sublimation. So that is all for this lecture. Nice meeting you in the next lecture.